It's peaked. How can anybody afford to buy and pay down a mortgage with these prices? Now, Craig, I don't disagree. I think that property in Australia has become very heated. And in many cases, I do believe that there is a bubble that does exist. Whether or not it's going to come crumbling down, there are a number of factors at play. I'm not a doomsdayer. I'm not necessarily a pessimist, but I'm also not a perpetual optimist like many people are when it comes to the Australian property market. So let's unpack this a little bit. Now, what we need to understand is that property as an asset class is primarily driven by the factors of supply versus demand. We need to understand that we have historically low vacancy rates in Australia across the entire country. When we go back like even 10 years, we used to work on a kind of a healthy vacancy rate being about 3%. And when we look across the country, it's below 1%, which basically means that for the amount of net migration that is coming into Australia, there is not a sufficient amount of property in order to be able to meet that future demand. And there's not a pipeline of that being fixed at any time in the immediate future. So when we think about supply and demand, when there is demand that outweighs supply, prices go up. But the cap to that is, of course, affordability. And affordability is determined by really two core factors. One is how much people can afford to borrow from the bank, and that's based on very strict servicing rules. The Australian banks, after the global financial crisis, implemented very significant responsible lending criteria. And although as a country we are very highly leveraged, there are substantial safety nets in place that the banks must follow in order to ensure that people don't over leverage themselves. And the second part is that obviously people need to be able to meet their living expenses and all of these other kinds of things. So it's about how much you perceive you can afford when you look to acquire a property as well. So these are kind of the biggest, the caps. So what we've got to understand is that property continues to go up because people can continue to borrow the money and they can afford to spend that. And as a general rule of thumb, I always try to work off the rule that your minimum mortgage repayment or your rent should not exceed 30% of your household income. And this comes down to the underlying principle that 50% of your household income should go to fixed expenses, so mortgage repayment, rent, utilities, groceries, those kinds of things. 30% should go to discretionary, your week-to-week spending, entertainment, holidays, that kind of stuff. And that you should ideally have 20% left over for surplus. And with that 20% surplus, we can use that to pay down the debt and use that to build wealth. Now, the idea here is that we know that property prices are going crazy. And look, I do believe that there's going to be some significant corrections in some places. I'm not quite sure if it's going to be any more than kind of double digits, like 10% or something like that. Some people are saying like 20%, 40%. I think that would be catastrophic. I don't think that's going to happen. But for the vast majority of places, I think property markets are probably going to sit flat for a period of time until affordability returns. We need wages growth. We've found that because of inflation the way that it is, net wages have not kept pace. So in fact, most people have got a pay cut after we consider the inflationary pressures that have existed. I think the last figures I saw is that the cost of living has increased about 18 to 19%, and real wages has only gone up about 14% over since COVID. So that's obviously a significant differential that we need to be mindful of. Now, I'm also the believer that you either find a way or you find an excuse. So when I work with my clients who are all business owners, and business owners typically have a hard time getting funding and being able to kind of build wealth outside of their business because they typically don't earn the same amount because they're reinvesting back into their business. They don't have necessarily great financial management, and their accountants tell them to minimize tax so they can't borrow money. So how we go about this is we say, okay, we want to buy a property. Let's do some research. What is the property that you want to buy? Let's assume it's a principal place of residence. Let's say that it's $1 million, okay? Now, how much do we need as a deposit? Let's assume 20%. So we need to save $200,000 as a deposit plus stamp duty. We're talking about $240,000. Of course, you could get in with lender's mortgage insurance for 10%, but let's just work off 20. Okay, and then that means we need to borrow $800,000 from the bank. Generally speaking, most people are going to, or most banks are going to lend you 6 times your income. There's obviously more rules to that. So essentially, if we were to borrow 800,000, we're going to need a household income of about 200 thereabouts, okay? And then we've got to work out what is based on the current interest rates of about 6%, what is that going to cost you, and does that align with your household budget? So we crunch all of these numbers and then we can reverse engineer it and work out, okay, well, do you have the money saved, yes or no? Okay, if you don't have the money saved for the deposit, based on your current household surplus, how long is it going to take you to save that? Let's look at the historical growth rate of the area that you're looking to buy and then forecast how long that's going to take you, okay? Then, if that's too long, then we're going to work out what levers we pull. okay, in a business context, well, what is the income that you would need to earn, then pay tax to then save enough money to get you into your property within the time frame that you want? And then we work out, okay, well, then for you to earn that income, what profit does your business need to make? How much revenue do you need to produce? How many clients do you need? How much do you need to charge? How many leads do you need? So then we can work out the exact activity to get you where you need to go. So, like, to give you some context, when we were living in Sydney, we found out that we wanted to buy our dream home. We didn't want to live in Sydney. We wanted land. We wanted to move on to acreage to set up our animal sanctuary. We worked out the property we wanted to buy was probably going to be about $1 million. Okay, so we went searching. We fitted out a troopy. We spent a year traveling around Australia, running the business from the road. We actually found out that doing that was going to allow us to drastically increase our household surplus. And then over the 12 months of us traveling, we would save the deposit that we needed to go and buy our dream home. And we subsequently did that. And essentially, we've basically almost fully offset that loan and we've made that happen. It was all because we crunched the numbers and we worked out exactly what we needed to save, exactly what we needed to do in order to get to the result. Now, of course, if you want to live somewhere in Sydney or in a capital city and a home is going to cost you 2 million, 3 million, whatever the number is, then you're going to have to work a whole lot harder. And it's about understanding what levers you can pull. It's about, okay, how much surplus can I produce? How much risk am I prepared to take? How long am I prepared to wait? Am I prepared to do other things to defer gratification in order to get to that particular thing? For example, rent vesting. Or am I prepared to realign my expectations if I don't feel that I want to pull those other levers or it's not going to make enough of a difference? This is the key to financial planning because we can whinge about property prices. We can hope that the market's going to crash and we're going to jump on that opportunity. But you can't bank on those things. Those are external factors that are outside of your control. What you're better off doing is understanding the numbers, working out the skill set of reverse engineering, understanding the sensitivity of the financial levers that you can control to get you to the goal that you want to achieve, and then go out there and get it. And ultimately, it all comes down to setting the right income target and then working out the activity that is required for you to get there. And this is the reason why I'm so passionate about business, because business gives you the ability to control those variables compared to being an employee. And this is the reason why we help our clients scale 7 and 8 figure businesses and maximize their profits so they have the financial means in order to buy assets in an expensive marketplace, accumulate substantial wealth, live amazing lifestyles, and create financial freedom a whole lot faster. I've been able to create financial freedom at 35 because I've been a business owner. As an employee, I never would have been able to do that. So I hope this has been helpful. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comments.